Well, I don't know. There you are.
I didn't go anywhere, I promise.
That was a weird waiting for Isaac to reconnect.
We have had the most bizarre series of false starts on Crowdcast lately, which is fun. But anyway, hi, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Your Handmade Business Television. That's YHBTV, our weekly series dedicated to helping you navigate all things Maker Life. Hashtag Maker Life. I am co-director of Academy of Handmade with Sharon Fain here, who is back. She made it back from.
Hey, I survived the heat of the Southwest desert to be back with you all. The only time it was really in jeopardy was in San Antonio. I didn't know if I would make it out of there alive, but
it happens.
It happens.
I don't know. Maybe everybody feels like that about San Antonio.
I don't know if you guys have ever been to San Antonio when it's been hot and humid. Let me know that I'm not the only one.
Anyway, we're glad to have you back. For those of you who might be new to YHB TV, we are tackling a topic every week that we think gets a little deeper into what's going on in your business. Today, we're talking about the thing that everybody's talking about lately, which is Etsy Wholesale and its death, imminent death. And we'll get into that in a little bit.
Right now, the plug is about to be pulled. It's going to happen soon.
For sure. So Sharon, I have to know from your road trip, what was like the most maker thing that you did?
What was the most maker thing that I did?
Or saw, or
oh man,
whatever.
I mean, I guess the one that I did personally was maybe in Martha. One of the things that I did is I made sure, like, we were writing postcards the whole time, and I made sure to get these postcards that you actually like drew on and painted and colored in yourself. I guess that's the most makery thing I did. I'm trying to think what else. I mean, besides like improvising shading devices in the car.
It's pretty DIY.
Yeah, I'd like to think so.
Wrap the towel over the window and roll the window up.
Yeah, there's like, using the seat belts with a blanket and doing stuff like that. So
for sure.
That definitely happened. I mean, I made sure to, anytime there was like a handmade shop or anything like that, to like stop in and like buy things that were from local makers, things like that. So we went to places in Winslow, Arizona, and this place called Bisbee in Arizona, and also in Marfa. I feel like we did some like getting some nice local items.
That's good. Those are always the best kinds of souvenirs, in my opinion.
Me too, yeah.
All right. Well, before we get into our topic today, we do want to let you all know that this episode of YHB TV is brought to you by Jumpstart Your Handmade Business, which is our signature program. Sharon and I have met thousands of makers over the years, and we have noticed some trends in the way their businesses progress. One of the things we've noticed is that there tends to be one major thing that makes it hard to make progress in their business, and that is getting the clarity and that they need and defining their roadmap to success. So we developed the self-guided Jumpstart program as an answer to that. We hope that it will help you understand the big picture of your business by setting goals, understanding the numbers in your business, and honing in on the right resources for the right solution. So if you're interested in that or want to know if you are, if it's the right thing for you to go after, we would recommend taking our Maker Business Type quiz, which you can find if you haven't taken it already, because I know most of you who have been here for a while know that we always talk about the quiz. But if you, for some reason, you haven't taken the quiz yet, do that first by clicking on that green button, and that'll help you get a little bit more understanding about where you are and where you're going. And then Jumpstart's the next step from that. So anyway, that said, so a couple weeks ago, was it 2 weeks ago now? Maybe 10 days ago, the announcement went out. Etsy's shutting down Etsy Wholesale. And I think it's happening in the next 30 days. I want to say it's like July something is the official close date. And a lot of people are upset, of course, naturally. It was a very helpful program for a lot of people. And there's a lot of talk about what to do next and things like that. So we thought we'd dedicate this episode to some helpful tips and some resources that we know of that can help you jump past Etsy wholesale and continue pursuing wholesale in a way that works for your business.
So I wanted to say that I think one of the reasons why people are bummed about Etsy wholesale, whether it drove a ton of wholesale business to them or not, is that it was essentially a free-ish service, depending on when you got in. Some people paid to be in there, different sums of money at different points, I guess. But it was basically, after you paid that one fee. But it was basically this service that Etsy provided. And it was you don't really have to do a lot. Like, you already had an Etsy shop and you probably, maybe you might have created a few listings for it. But it was the onus was on buyers who were searching for this stuff. So it was kind of nice because you knew that buyers were already basically on Etsy searching for, handmade goods, and this sort of weeded out who actually was a wholesaler on Etsy. And then buyers could just go through Etsy wholesale and, figure out the stores that they wanted to buy from. And so it was nice for makers because you don't really have to do a lot to get a sale. And you really didn't have to give Etsy anything either, depending on how you completed the transaction. So it was like this nice addition to the site and things like that. So that said, obviously, everyone knows you can still do wholesale without Etsy wholesale. You can still go after stores. Obviously, having this very nice service where buyers just come to you and you didn't really have to do a lot is totally, kind of gone at that level. But there are still ways to sort of, supplement that, I think. And that's what we kind of wanted to talk about today. And just also talk about the nature of, when things like this shut down, like, how do you kind of prepare for that? And, because it's kind of inevitable, right? So I posted in our Facebook group, if Isaac wants to post the link to our Facebook group, putting him on the spot. I did post in our Facebook group a few sites that do this. If you're in the Etsy wholesale group already, and if not, I'm giving this new information to you. There's this website called Stockable, and I will put this in the chat as well too. This is for Stockable, which is a new marketplace that's open up. It's curated. Now, I think a lot of these new other marketplaces that are kind of trying to be Etsy wholesale, they usually take commissions, or there's usually a monthly fee involved. And most of them are going to be curated. And that's because I think, most of you can figure out, like, if you're trying to make it easy for buyers to buy, like, you want a lot of good quality buyers on your site, you're going to try to only just select a range of vetted and quality brands that you already know, and you don't want to overwhelm them. And that's always right. That's the poopy thing, to use the nice word. That's the poopy thing about using Etsy to find wholesale is there's just, or any product really, there's just a ton of stuff on there. So whatever you're looking for, you've got to weed through a lot. And so these marketplaces are trying to make buyers not overwhelmed and to just get in and get out. And, it's like curatorial, right? So there is, Isaac put the poop emoji up. So that is why these websites exist like that. So one of them is Stockable. A woman who actually is in the Etsy wholesale group is launching this. It's totally new. I cannot say if it's great or not. She's doing having people apply for it basically right now. So it's kind of it's not even in launch. It's not even in a beta mode yet. So that is one option, the stockable, if you're interested. Another one is I've just found this one called SKU. And again, I don't know anyone that's on it, but this was just in my research of coming up with it. So if you guys have used SKU, feel free to let us know. But it also looked like another marketplace, but also had ways to sort of like education and stuff to help you with wholesale. So
how have I never heard of this one before, Sharon?
I don't know. I feel like it must be relatively new. Another one, which is the big guy in the game, I think, the most well-known, the one that nobody is able to get into right now, I feel like, because they're all booked up, is Indigo Fair. I will say that Indigo Fair has received, and I know people are weirdly very loyal to Indigo Fair. I guess the way that people are weirdly defensive of Etsy is that Indigo Fair has received some sort of, criticism for the way it operated in the beginning, with just kind of basically telling buyers they could hook them up with artists that they did not represent. So those artists obviously are not on that site anymore and are kind of pissed. But that said, they recognize the error of their ways and do not do that anymore. But just full disclosure on them. And they do have, I think it winds up being like 15% commission. I think that includes with the card charge. I don't remember. If it doesn't, then I guess it'd be up to 18%. But so some people feel like that's really steep. 15% is usually what you would pay an actual sales rep. And some people argue, just giving you the lay of the land here. Some people argue that an actual sales rep is a better value because of how they promote your business in other ways and are shown in other places, not just on this one site, blah, blah, blah. So, but that, whatever you feel like that is what theirs is. 25% for new accounts and orders. Oh, wow. Okay. That's a lot. That's more than industry standard. Anyways, 15 to 20% is what usually people take that are actual human sales reps. So, but yes. But again, it might be worth it for you. It's your business. We're not here to tell you how to run it. We're just here to give you all of the information, good and bad and in between. So there's that. Now they're also, I feel like their model has changed a little bit. But the last, I would say, in our marketplace of marketplace type things that are relatively comparable to Etsy Wholesale is IndieMe. Theirs, I believe, is a pay a little bit every month, and then they do like a small transaction fee on top of that. And then like if you are a higher volume, you could pay more per month and then get a lower transaction fee, that kind of situation. So yeah, and I know that other makers use them. I cannot think of anyone off the top of my head that actually uses them, but they, as far as I know, are reputable. Yeah, so those are the other alternatives. I think
I would add to that. I mean, so yes, there are a lot of alternatives and they all kind of take different forms and have different business models and things like that. I think one of the questions that a lot of people are probably asking at this point is, well, how do I know which one I should do? And I think that's going to largely depend on how your business is structured, what investment you're willing to make. I mean, some people may see, 25% commission on the first order for Indigo Fair if you get accepted, and then it drops to 15%. They may say that's not worth it, or my margins aren't built to accommodate that, so I need to focus on something else. That's fine. You don't have to jump into Indigo Fair. Other people may say, hey, my product, it really fits with their aesthetic and it's not a saturated part of their market, so I'm going to really push for it and I'm willing to make that investment just like I would with a sales rep or something like that. It's really about evaluating what you need most out of a wholesale marketing situation, and then finding the best fit for you. And I think that the other thing to remember, and I think we're going to talk about this a little bit more, but basically Etsy Wholesale, one of the reasons like Sharon mentioned, why people are so upset about it is because it was in a lot of ways easy money. You could list things for little to no investment. Etsy was doing the work on driving the traffic, just like Etsy did the work on driving the traffic to the retail shops for the bulk of, I mean, that's what they still do, but it's become so saturated that it's harder to find people now. And so it's easy to lament the disappearance of something that requires little to no effort of your own, when in truth, wholesale and pursuing wholesale is a huge effort for your business. And it's highly unlikely that any of these new services or platforms will even be able to begin to touch what Etsy Wholesale built for pretty much for free for the sellers.
Yeah. I will say the thing about Etsy Wholesale is because it wasn't really qualifying its market and curating it, is that a lot of people did really almost never get sales or none at all, you know. So I think that's the good with the bad on this stuff, right? Like you were before in a place where you had not a ton of control over people coming to you, but you don't really have to do any that much work for people to come to you, and then it'd be like, hey, a free sale, basically. I didn't really do much work for this. I didn't have to send postcards. I didn't have to, call them, email them, whatever. Feel like I had to harass them to get that nice sale. And then, if it's repeat business from them, even all the better. So, but it is what it is. So these are marketplaces. We did have one other recommendation, which is Wholesale in a Box, which is just basically a service that helps you to identify shops that you might want to go after. So it's not a marketplace per se, but it's basically, instead of you having to find the shops and do all that legwork, Wholesale in a Box kind of like pre-qualifies shops and does that for you. And from what we've heard, they've also been very very, very supportive of their customers, that they have really great email support. And if you have questions or there's something going on and all of that they're really, really great too. So that is also one a lot of makers recommend too. Lucky Break Consulting also offers another one called Wholesale Matchmaker as well. That's a very similar program. Heather asked, she said, how much experience with wholesale do you ideally need to be successful on these online sites? Well, Heather, one of the things that I would say is that it kind of depends. Obviously, you should be in a place where you should be ready to wholesale. I don't think experience with wholesale is any sort of like pre-qualifier, especially for sites like Indigo Fair where they're charging you a lot. They should be supporting your business in terms of like helping you to be ready, have a great wholesale. Like, so one of the things that Etsy did, and obviously it's not exactly the same here, but obviously Etsy goes through and they have their handbook and seller education and stuff like that. So there's wholesale information there that's for free to help them. But they also did things like helping you kind of get the training wheels of a line sheet together, helping you do the idea of a starter pack. Things like that on Etsy Wholesale were things that weren't exactly like them, I would say, like doing a deep dive into helping you understand wholesale. But even the Etsy Wholesale group, which is still active and I think will still remain active, has been very supportive as well too. So I don't think any of these things should all of these things should have some sort of like built-in way to make you presenting yourself as a wholesaler fairly easily. But I don't think any of them are probably going to you should worry about not having a ton of experience because you haven't done them. I would say just if you don't have a lot of experience, be aware of your own prices and be aware of what your prices can handle. When just do a lot of math, basically.
Yeah.
Because if you know, you could and figure out who their target buyers are and stuff like that. Because if they have a lot of other brands on there that don't seem like your brands, then that probably means they don't have a lot of buyers that are probably your buyer. Just you have any thoughts on that, Isaac?
No, I think you covered it.
All right.
All right. Let's talk a little bit about how you can actually conduct wholesale transactions without Etsy Wholesale, because one of the things that was great about it is that it created a platform where you could take payment at your wholesale pricing from wholesale buyers. And obviously that's going away. So I wouldn't call it the easiest solution, but one of the more natural conclusions that a lot of people are drawing, especially active Etsy sellers, is that, oh, well, I can just offer a 50% off coupon on my Etsy shop that I can give out to my wholesale buyers. And that's something that's come up in a lot of conversations I've been seeing. And I think that that's certainly something you could consider. If you don't have your own website, if you're only selling on Etsy, and you have wholesale relationships that you want to continue cultivating, then I think that's something you can consider. The downsides to that are that, and somebody brought this up in one of the threads, and it was a very good point, is that if you offer a 50% off shop code, you're essentially saying that every single item in your shop is available at wholesale pricing at that rate. So there's no way to customize your pricing per product or to exclude items from your catalog of potential wholesale, things like that. That could get you into a lot of trouble if you have a really wide variety of stuff, if you do a lot of custom work and list custom items in your shop, things like that. So you want to be really careful about that. Another thing people have suggested is creating custom listings for your buyers once you know what their order is going to be. That makes me a little nervous. I think, I don't know what your thoughts are, Sharon, but I think that the potential for confusing retail customers if they see a custom listing for a wholesale order is really high. And that's a lot of extra work. I don't know. Do you have thoughts on that?
I just think it's an awkward solution with, potential for error. I think when you start doing these gerrymandering things at a certain point, it just kind of seems a tad unprofessional, I think. That's just my feeling about it. Like, Etsy as a general marketplace is just not designed for the wholesale transactions. Like, it's great that somebody could still find you on there and ask if you do wholesale and all of that. I just think you should probably find a better way to process all of that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So then what's the other solution? It's your own website. So barring these other platforms that we talked about, some of the other resources that are out there to help you find buyers, and some of which do include the ability to process transactions, your wholesale transactions really should be predominantly taking place on your own website. And I know that can get complicated for those makers out there who either have a fledgling website of their own, or they're selling predominantly on Etsy, or they are not using a robust platform like Shopify, or even some of the other platforms. I'm totally drawing a blank on their names, but it's really important that you work toward providing a way for your wholesale buyers to conduct business with you from your own domain.
I think too, it's really not that hard anymore for people, even if you don't have a Shopify website, which I get, it's like, that's the gold standard. But I feel like most websites have the capability in some way, some fashion, to have a walled off area that is, only available via entering a password that you can just give out to wholesale buyers, and then having your line sheet and all of that separate, right? And the reason you want to have it separate is because you're not wanting to disclose those prices and confuse regular customers with any of that, right? So having the separate site and that you can do the transaction through, just even through PayPal, in there is not going to be that difficult, I don't think. I honestly, even if you don't have your own website, I would rather just run something like that through PayPal than through Etsy. I think that's just weird and complicated.
And I would add that if you are anxious about the prospect, like if you're only on Etsy right now and you're anxious about the prospect of setting up a retail and a wholesale shop on your own website, maybe what you do as an interim solution is you create a password protected wholesale only shop on your website and point all your retail customers to Etsy. So that way you can keep them completely separate. And you don't have to, create two entire marketplaces with your goods on a single website in addition to the one you're already using.
I think we've discussed this too, and I don't remember. I feel like maybe it was in State of Making recently, but I feel like the advice about having there's a difference between creating a mirror wholesale site to your site that people feel like is actually probably more complicated than needed, that just it's basically the same thing. You don't need to go through all of that. I think Ariane might have even talked about this, but just having a separate area on your website. It doesn't need to mirror and have the exact same thing as your regular website. Just it's an area that also includes a line sheet, a way to check out for them to, do payment that isn't via your regular cart. And because you're doing a wholesale order, that's usually more involved than you're usually talking with whoever the potential stockist is more than you are with a regular customer. Like it's rare that somebody is going to order through your website and never email you personally or anything like that, if that makes sense. And you can also tell them to talk to you before processing.
For sure. And I think the last thing that I would add is don't be afraid to go analog if you need to. There are plenty, shop owners are still used to using an order form. I mean, yes, online is incredibly convenient. Online payments are incredibly convenient. But if it really comes down to it, and you need to put together an order form, send them a PDF and fill that out, and then send them an invoice through PayPal or whatever system you're using to track your finances, that's also a perfectly legitimate possibility.
Yeah. I would say checks, things like that, though, unless it's like really reputable company.
Well,
anyways.
I wouldn't say analog payments, but analog shopping.
Yeah, exactly. This is how people did wholesale before. You just sent a catalog and went back and forth, and it was, it worked. Okay. Obviously, this is our next point. Obviously, if you are on Etsy Wholesale, that you should be communicating with existing buyers, and letting them know the transition. I would assume probably a good portion of your buyers that you've worked with through Etsy Wholesale have also gotten an email from Etsy because they're in the system too. But I think this is a good reason why you should have a email list that is just dedicated to your stockists, and emailing them updates on what's happening, and just say, Etsy Wholesale is shutting down, and maybe link to Etsy Wholesale's notice that they're shutting down, and just tell, give an explanation. This is how I'm going to be moving forward. This is how you can buy from me in the future, and I would probably also include maybe a newsy bit about like something that like tease something that's coming out that's new, or whatever it is, to kind of, more than just say like Etsy Wholesale shutting down. Here's how to buy from me. Here's how to buy from me. And give them reasons why, basically. Yeah, exactly. So, and make sure to, include that, like, okay, because that can help people who are, it's a good reason to talk to stockists that isn't, something that's just about trying to push products. It's a reason to contact them, and it can kind of jog their memory and be like, oh, okay, I meant to reorder. Whatever it is. So those little pitches in there can help kind of move that forward.
Exactly. I think what would I add to that? I would say that there's communication is critical in this process. Yeah, I would even feel like over communicating is helpful. Uh,
Yeah, a
yeah,
couple
a couple
emails.
emails. Give them a
Just
final
a
one before
reminder.
the final deadline when everything closes. Some people have mentioned that one way they're incentivizing people to do a reorder outside of Etsy Wholesale is by giving them a coupon code, 5% off, 10% off, whatever they feel is right for their business. There are lots of ways.
Likely questionable.
Well, yeah, I know. Like, it doesn't mean you have to. It's just something that some people have decided is right for them, or worth the lower profit margin. And yeah. So lastly, and maybe this goes without saying, and we've said it before, and we'll say it again, but let this serve as a reminder that you should never have all your eggs in one basket for your business, especially when that basket is managed entirely by a company outside of your control.
Yes. No, totally agree. This goes for, if you're only on Etsy and that's all you're doing, like that can quickly, if this was the only thing you were doing for wholesale, I hope this motivates you to pursue and get stuff together for, like, now that you've been on Etsy Wholesale, you should be able to easily transfer a lot of this to, I don't want to say the real world, but the off Etsy stuff, this lets you branch out into wholesale in other ways and be proactive about it too. So, yeah, if all of your eggs are in one basket, things can shift on you, whether that be social media, whether that be where you're selling, all of that stuff. So definitely this is a great reminder of that. I did want to mention that we did have another comment, which was Alexandra said, this goes back to me listing all of the other marketplaces. She said, have you heard of Hubba.com? I received multiple emails from them. And yes, I have heard of them. I don't know anyone who has specifically been on there, but they seem to also have come up in other discussions about other platforms, and people have seemed to they've seemed fine. So that is, I don't know if you have anything to add to that, Isaac.
No, I mean, there are other platforms too, and that aren't necessarily wholesale specific, but that are larger sales platforms. Like the Grommet does a lot of bulk sales for makers. There are lots of options out there, but I think that even though there are lots of options out there, you should always consider having your own space where you can control what your wholesale situation looks like, and facilitate transactions without having to rely solely on a startup or even a larger publicly traded company whose commitment might be wavering to the products that they're offering.
Yep. I mean, and this is just how business and the marketplace works, right? Things shift, trends happen, new things disrupt other things. You have to always be agile. And again, that goes for everything. So if you're only just trying to do it one way, you're probably not going to get very far. That said, if you're trying to do it a million ways, you're also probably not going to get very far. So hone in your focus, make sure you're diversified, but not overstrained, overworked. So,
yep. Is that it?
All right.
No more questions?
If there are any questions, feel free to ask, guys. But I was going to mention the next 3 weeks, we are doing Christmas in July preview, I guess. Even though it's June, we're calling this Christmas in July. But that's because July is usually the month where a lot of makers get down to business with wholesale and their media strategy and other kinds of business prep. So we're going to kind of walk you through that a little early and talk about things you should be thinking about in July to get you ready for the holidays.
Exactly. And I would say, as a little primer to that, if you're like, then I would recommend going back to last week's YHB TV episode with Kylie Fator, whatever her last name is. I can't ever pronounce it correctly the first time. And listen to that. She's a retail shop owner and was talking about some of the things that she's doing even now before July to prep for her holiday season. And so especially if you are fresh to the wholesale scene, you are going to want to check that out, and then check out the next 3 weeks because we got a lot of good stuff coming your way.
Oh, it looks like we have one other question. Cheryl says, is there any way to find out whether there are customers who have items in their cart on Etsy Wholesale but haven't submitted their orders, would like to capture those orders before the platform shuts down?
That is a good question.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I would ask Etsy directly because I've not heard people talk about that. That's a great strategy. You could bring it up in the Etsy Wholesale group as well, too. I feel like that would be a good place to crowdsource that answers, or people might have hacks for trying to figure that out. I know there was that whole offering people a coupon in their cart thing, like with empty carts. I don't think that worked on wholesale though, right? I don't think that would have applied to people who were in wholesale.
Moments where I wish I had like a dummy Etsy shop where I could just go and check.
Yeah. I also think, yeah. I think that's right. That's kind of the issue with Etsy is you don't get all of that knowledge sometimes. So I wish that everyone would be able to do that. All right. Well, I think that's it for today, Isaac.
That's all I've got.
All right. Well, we will hopefully see you back here next week, same time, for another YHB TV. We're going to talk about Christmas in July Wholesale Edition. So we will see you guys then. Hopefully between now and then, we'll see you in the Facebook group. Bye, everybody.